Hello everybody, I'm Dibun Grabovci and today I'm going to present my work titled Updates on Central Nervous System Tumors, which I've prepared together with my mentor, Professor Patricia Tai, and the other co-authors which I've mentioned below. Now, I'm the main author of this work and I just graduated from the University of Pristina in Kosovo. And together with my colleagues, we are working with Professor Patricia Tai, who also serves as our mentor. We declare no conflict of interest. And now we all know that central nervous system tumors represent a quite complex and diverse group of neoplasms that pose significant challenges in diagnosis and management. Now, central nervous system tumors can be categorized as primary and secondary. Uh, Metastatic tumors are the most common out of these two. And over the past decade, there have been notable advancements in their management. Now, for this presentation, we've conducted a literature review of the past 10 years of using PubMed and major conferences proceedings. Now, our results show that one systemic drug which has been tested is vorasidenib, who underwent the INDIGO trials, a randomized double-blind controlled phase 3 trial who took place in 2023. Now, in this trial, they tested vorasidenib, who is IDH1 and 2 enzyme inhibitor, and they tested 340 patients who have mutated grade 2 gliomas, and they were separated into two groups, one who took vorasidenib and the other who was a placebo group. Now, patients had measurable non-enhancing disease assessed centrally, and they had not received any post-operative treatment. Now, the results of this study show that the primary endpoint of the study was progression-free survival. Now, the progression-free survival was 68.3%, and it was more common in patients who received vorasidenib compared to the placebo group. Now, patients on vorasidenib went almost 28 months without any tumor growth, compared to the placebo group who only went 11 months without tumor growth. Also, for patients on vorasidenib, the time to the next intervention was significantly improved as compared with the placebo group. Also, there were some side effects which were noted, and they were more common in the vorasidenib group. The main one was an increase in alanine aminotransferase, and which was the most common side effect which was shown, and happened in 9.6% of. Another drug which was FDA approved in 2024 was tovorafenib. It is now being used for refractory and relapsed pediatric low-grade gliomas harboring a BRAF fusion or BRAF V60 mutations. Now, in the Firefly-1 trials, there were 76 patients who had received at least one line of prior systemic therapy. Now, there were some exclusion criteria, such as patients who had another mutation like IDH1 or 2 mutation, FGFR mutations, and also who were suspected of having neurofibromatosis type 1. Now, tovorafenib was given orally once per week based on body surface area. The major efficacy outcome measure was overall response rate, which was defined as the portion of patients with complete, partial response, and minimal response, defined by the blinded independent central review. Now, the median duration of response was 13.8 months. The most common adverse reactions were rash, hair color change, viral infections, fatigue, hemorrhage, and so on. There were also grade 3 and 4 laboratory abnormalities noted, which were decrease in phosphate, sodium, potassium, hemoglobin, albumin, lymphocytes, leukocytes, and also there was an increase in alanine and aspartate aminotransferase and creatine phosphokinase. The dose which was recommended based on body surface area was 380 milligrams per square meter orally once per week, but this dose could go up to 600 milligrams per week. Now another trial which was done, but this time in radiotherapy treatment, is the QUARTZ trial, a randomized phase 3 non-inferiority trial involving 538 patients who had non-small cell lung carcinoma. Patients were divided into two groups, and one group took optimal supportive care, including dexamethasone, versus the other group who had optimal supportive care plus whole brain radiation therapy. Now, the dose of dexamethasone was determined based on the patient's symptoms. The primary outcome measure was quality adjusted life years, which was measured based on some questionnaires which were done weekly by the patients. Now, secondary outcome measures were overall survival and quality of life. What we saw from this trial is that the difference between the mean quality adjusted life years between these two groups was only 4.7 days. An exception was made in people who were younger than 60 years old. No significant difference was noted in overall survival, where the median survival was 9.2 weeks with whole brain radiation therapy compared to the 8.5 weeks with the OSC alone. Now, also, there were more side effects noted in the group who took whole brain radiation therapy, like hair loss, drowsiness, and so on. Another metric which is being used is brain metastasis velocity. Now, brain metastasis velocity, or BMV, is the cumulative number of new brain metastases that develop after the first SRS divided by time since the initial SRS. Now, patients were classified by BMV into low, intermediate, and high-risk groups. Now, the low group was who had less than 6 new metastases per year. 6 to 15 were the intermediate group, and over 15 were the high-risk group. Now, BMV had a significant correlation with overall survival, with lower BMV corresponding to a higher overall survival. Now, the low group had 22 months of median overall survival, 12.4 for the intermediate group, and 8 months for the high-risk group. Also, we could see that the median BMV for breast, lung, renal cell cancer and melanomas were 4.3, 5.4, 6, and 9.2 new metastases per year, respectively. Now, neurological death was significantly increased with the increase of BMV. Another trial which focused on whole brain radiation therapy and tested if during the whole brain radiation therapy the hippocampus was avoided, would it determine the cognitive decline of the patient? Now, the patients were divided into two groups, one who took whole brain radiation therapy with hippocampal avoidance, and the other who took whole brain radiation therapy the standard way. Now, what was seen is that after 4 months, the executive functions of the group who avoided the hippocampus were far better than the group who had standard whole brain radiation therapy. Also, after 6 months, memory and learning had a less severe decline in the group who had hippocampal avoidance compared to the standard group. As far as overall survival, treatment-related toxicity, and other parameters go, they were the same. Only the cognitive decline was lower or reduced in the group who had hippocampal avoidance. Another study was the brain stereotactic radiotherapy and immune checkpoint inhibitors in non-small cell lung cancers with brain metastasis. Now, in this study, there were 3 groups. One had SRT before immunotherapy, the other took them both at the same time, and SRT after immunotherapy. Now, this study focused on overall survival, regional progression-free interval, and treatment toxicity. The median overall survival was 18 months, and overall survival after 1 and 2 years were the same in the three groups. Now, what we could find here is that the regional progression-free interval after 1 year was the highest in the concurrent SRT and immunotherapy group, and the lowest was in the group who did SRT before immunotherapy. Local progression-free interval after 1 year was high in all three groups, which tells us that SRT is effective no matter when we start it. Now, here there is a single isocentered VMAT, volumetric modulated arc therapy, and I put it here because one study compared this method with Gamma knife, and results show that they both had the same efficiency, and even in some studies, single isocentered VMAT proved to be better than Gamma knife. Now another method is tumor treating fields, TT fields. Now, they work by disrupting spindle formation, dielectrophoretic disruption, and DNA and replication stress. Now, in one clinical trial, they compare TT fields with the best available chemotherapy in patients with glioblastomas. And TT fields proved just as effective as the best chemotherapeutic treatment, but had less side effects. Another trial compared patients who first had surgery or biopsy, then chemoradiation with temozolomide. After that, they were randomized into one group who only took TMZ and the other who had TMZ plus TT fields. Now, the results showed that the combination of TMZ and TT fields was far better and compared to the group who only took TMZ. Another novel treatment idea, which is being tested in the PALM trial, is the use of an oncolytic herpes simplex virus in treating high-grade gliomas. Now, the PALM trial employs a genetically engineered oncolytic herpes simplex virus, type 1, who is designed with a dual payload genes. So, one encoding human interleukin-12, which enhances immune activation, and the other encoding for anti-PD-1 antibody fragments, which helps counteract immune suppression in the tumor microenvironment. Now, this dual mechanism is intended to convert cold tumors into hot tumors, a significant challenge in glioblastoma treatment. Also, there was the implantation of a pump that enables repeated doses, allowing both priming and boosting doses of the immunotherapeutic agent. Now, as a conclusion, substantial advancements have been made in systemic and radiation therapy to improve central nervous system tumor care, increase the overall survival, and decrease the side effects. However, more studies need to be done in this area. Now, for the end, I want to thank some co-authors and collaborators. Without them, this presentation wouldn't have been possible. So I'd like to thank Professor Glenn Bauman, Rashmi Kul, Jake Van Dyke, and also my mentor, Professor Patricia Tai. Thank you.